promoting evolution. Well, evolution has nothing to do with science. It's a philosophy. Actually, if you really study it, it's a pagan philosophy. Did you know the pagans believe they evolved from animals? Did you know the Satanists believe we are animals? And did you know the pagans also believe that the earth was eons of years old? Darwin didn't come up with anything new. He just renewed paganism again. And we got all the disasters that go with it. But we're going to take a look at a reducing atmosphere. This is what I was taught. The early Earth's atmosphere was a reducing atmosphere. What's a reducing atmosphere? Well, we have an oxidizing atmosphere. We have oxygen in the air. How many of you like oxygen in the air? I do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So what was in there? Methane, ammonia, water vapor, and hydrogen. Now, according to their research, well, really not research, it's their belief, there was no free oxygen in the atmosphere. Because oxygen has a tendency to do what? Oxidize. When your car is turning orange or red, and it's not orange or red, and you're not painting it, that's oxidation of iron. That also happens to the basic building blocks of life. So if you've got oxygen in the atmosphere, it would oxidize anything that would try to evolve into life. So oxygen in the atmosphere, it will not work. So I was always taught in college and high school, according to uniformitarianism, the present is the key to the past. You know they reject that. They don't use that. They only use it when it's convenient. They have to reject the present because things cannot evolve in this atmosphere. So they dump this present and they come up with something else. Why do they use those chemicals? Because that's the chemicals they needed to get what they wanted to get. This is not from science. So, how many of you are familiar with the ozone layer? Yeah, without an ozone layer, guess what would happen to you and life on this planet? UV light would literally burn up life. UV light is no friend to evolution. And what do you need to have an ozone layer? Oxygen. If you have no oxygen, you don't have an ozone layer because ozone is made up of 3 atoms of oxygen. So if you have no ozone or no oxygen in the atmosphere, you would have no ozone, and UV light would destroy anything trying to evolve. So no oxygen, no ozone, no life. So if you put oxygen in the atmosphere, guess what? You cannot have life evolving by chance and accident. It's a catch-22. Oxygen in, oxygen out, evolution is dead. And we can go home right now. Finish up the talk, that's it. Because they can't get around this. So, but I've got more to teach. Do they have any evidence for this? No. The oldest rock they have, this is some Precambrian rock layers. These, according to the Bible, are day 3 rocks. And they have these red bands. What causes this to be red? Anybody know what causes that to be red? Oxidization of iron. Which means, according to research, oxygen has always been in our atmosphere. Which means life could never have ever evolved. And it really doesn't either. So do they have any evidence for a reducing atmosphere? 0. To have a theory, guess what you need? Evidence. If you have no evidence, you have no theory. So when someone says this is a theory of evolution, that is scientifically incorrect. Did you know that? It is the religion or the philosophy of evolution. It has nothing to do with science. It irritates me when people talk about evolution is science or this is science or follow the science. Well, if they follow the science, there wouldn't be any evolutionists. They don't follow the science. And that's where I used to be. Well, we won't go into that. So I was taught there was a primordial soup. Well, if there was a primordial soup with all these chemicals needed in life, we should be able to find some evidence for it. Because it would have been really thick to have life evolve by chance and accident. And guess what? There is 0 evidence. There's no evidence of it. It's all made up. Well, Stanley Miller and Urey, back in the early 1950s, they made this apparatus showing that, life could evolve by chance and accident. This is what I was taught in college and high school. So they built this apparatus. They had to take all the oxygen out of it because any oxygen in that apparatus would destroy the experiment that we're trying to do. So what did they put in there? Methane, ammonia, water, and hydrogen. Well, water was in here, and they heated it up, and the water vapor came up here. They put the gases in here, and the gases came up in this apparatus, and then they had some electrodes here, simulated lightning, and combined these molecules into more complex molecules. And then down here, they had a trap. Why did they have a trap? Well, they had to put a trap here because the energy here and the energy here would destroy the molecules that they were trying to make. Energy was no friend to evolution, because it destroys things. So the first one didn't have this trap, and well, the experiment was a flop. So they built the trap in there to catch and take off these chemicals. But in nature, there is no trap. UV light would continue to destroy, and the energy would destroy them. And a lot of these molecules they have a very short half-life. That means they decay very rapidly. And but the question is, what did they produce? I was taught they produced evidence that life could evolve. Well, this is what they produced. They produced carbon monoxide. Oh, that's friendly for life, right? How many of you like carbon monoxide? Not a good thing. Nitrogen. Oh, yes, as a farmer, I like nitrogen. That's plant food. Yes, that's good. But then solids, they produce 85% of what they produced was tar. That was toxic to life. And then these acids, again, 13% were toxic. And they were trying to make amino acids, which only 2% of what they made was amino acids. And the issue, there's 20 amino acids that life uses. And they only could produce 2 of the 20. Wow. Well, but amino acids come in left-hand and a right-hand amino acids. They're mirror images of each other. Living proteins only use left-hand amino acids. They don't use right. And there's hundreds of different amino acids, more than just the 20. He produced roughly 50-50 of each. They will react with each other just as much as left to left and right to right. Because if you get one right-hand amino acid in a amino acid protein chain, maybe I better describe what amino acids are. How many of you like to eat meat? Meat is made up of proteins, and proteins are made up of amino acids. If you get one right-hand amino acid in a protein chain, it does not fold right. And if it doesn't fold right, it does not work right. And if you get too many proteins in your body that do not fold right, guess what happens to you? You die. And so they produce 50-50 of each. So really, when you take a look at the experiment, they produce garbage. This is totally worthless. What this actually proved, it was impossible for life to evolve by chance and accident. And I gave you this simplified version. It is more complex than this. And now they discovered that hydrogen is leaking out of our atmosphere. Do you know that Earth's gravity cannot hold hydrogen in? It is leaking, and helium is leaking out of our atmosphere. So I just wasted basically 5 minutes of your life. None of it works. Well, this is the natural process of chemistry left to itself. How many of you like the browning of foodstuff or nice slimy lettuce? How many of you like that? That's the best part of the salad. Because this is what happens when chemistry is left to itself. It doesn't build things, the things fall apart. Yes, and an apple, you drop an apple and it bruises and it turns brown. Oh, that's the yummy part, right? What's going on here, the browning of foodstuff is caused by amino acids reacting with sugars, and we also have oxidation taking place here. And see, not only are we made up of amino acids, we're also made up of sugars. But what's interesting with the sugars, they're right-handed. They're all right-handed. Major problem for evolution, because you got left-hand amino acids, you got right-handed sugars. Yeah. And the chemicals that get the sugars will destroy the amino acids. Yeah, it doesn't work. It all falls apart at every stage. Yes. So, and when you take a look at, we're also made of sugars, and some of us are probably sweeter than others. Yeah. And this is in the mystery of life's origin. This goes back a few years, but they went through all the chemistry, and things are getting worse. The more and more we know about chemistry and life, it is not getting better for evolution, it is getting worse. I believe in evolution because of ignorance. Did you know that? And deception. And the more we know about science, we do know that evolution does not work. It's getting harder and harder to explain how evolution works, because science goes directly against it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue on. So if you had a primordial soup there, you had all the chemicals like the nucleotide bases, and you got the amino acids, and you got the sugars, you got the phosphates, you got the fats, there will be all kinds of wrong chemical reactions. They will not come together in the right way. Yes, and again, I'm giving you the simplified version of you can get deeper to this, and then when you get deeper, it even gets worse. So chance and accident, that's evolution, must follow the laws of nature. If it doesn't follow the chemical laws of nature, that means evolution does not work. See, when you took a look at life, somebody's messing around with the chemicals and putting it together. Did you know God played in the mud? He played in the mud. He took the dust of the earth plus mud, because everything was irrigated by an underground irrigation system, and he made a mud pie. Do you like to play in the mud? I like to play in the mud. When I was a kid, playing in the mud was good. You can make these mud pies. Well, God made this mud pie and looked like a man, put the chemicals together just in the right way, breathed into him, and he became alive. Wow. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to the experts here. The supposed building blocks don't combine to form the long molecules, that's polymers, that's the polypeptides required for life. Rather, the reverse happens, especially in water. See, I was taught life evolved in water. Do you know water is an enemy to evolution? Because it hydrolyzes things. It breaks the amino acids apart. Yeah. So the whole thing breaks down. Nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals spontaneously organize themselves into the first living cell. According to science, you shouldn't be here. Did you know that? According to science, you shouldn't be here. So the question is, why are you here? My mom and dad made me come this morning. Is that why you're here? No, that's not what I'm talking about. According to science, you should not be here. So why are you here? Somebody had to put you together. That's the only explanation. Because it doesn't happen by chance and accident. And the present is the key to the past. We know it can't happen today, so we know it didn't happen in the past. Somebody put us together. Now, Hebrews 11:6. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So, before you can come to Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you have to believe who exists. God. Because Jesus Christ is God in the flesh. Now, can you see God standing beside me here? No. So how do we know he really exists? Well, we're going to go to a scientific statement here. Did you know this is the definition of empirical science? I'll show you. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. This word clearly seen means observations, experimentation, and so on. When you look at this word clearly seen, it means more than just seeing. It means you're touching and experiencing it. Being understood by the things that are made, that's creation and nature, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Basically, we observe nature, and through nature we get understanding and knowledge, and there is so much evidence in science that there's no excuse for anyone not knowing there's a one true God. Isn't that interesting? See, there's going to be no excuse, no defense when people stand up before the great white throne judgment. There will be no defense. Evidence is all there. So I'm going to give you a quiz or a test this morning. How many of you like quizzes and tests? Okay, there's always some weird people in here. I hate quizzes and tests. I love to study. I love to study. The quizzes and tests, my viewpoint is it's hard for me to stay focused. I'm always thinking about this. I got stories. Well, we won't go back there. Okay, so here's the test. It's a time for a test. You all see these rocks here. Can you see two rocks where it takes an intelligent person to make them? Anybody? 4 and 8. Great, thank you, 4 and 8. When you look at 4 and 8, what do you think of? Arrowheads. Who makes arrowheads? People do. What do they use? Rocks, antlers, and so on. But did you see the person make these arrowheads? So how do you know someone made them? Maybe some rocks fell off a cliff, and as they fell down the cliff, they fell into and hit other rocks and hit antlers. By the time they got to the bottom of the cliff, they turned into arrowheads. How many of you believe that? These are only simple chips on a rock. Are you more complex than a simple chip on a rock? Yeah. You know, it's easier to believe that story than that you evolved from rocks. Wow. Well, these other rocks I picked up along a riverbed. Water energy was going over these rocks. If I throw these two arrowheads into the river, we're adding energy to it, will they become better arrowheads? No. Raw energy is no friend to evolution. So there is order there. Rocks are made of, and matter's made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. By changing the number of electrons, protons, and neutrons, you come up with different elements. By combining different atoms, you come up with different molecules. Here we have a water molecule. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Yes, and water vapor is very disorganized. If you cool down water vapor, it will condense into liquid water. That's an increase in order. And if you freeze liquid water, it comes in ice cubes, and that's an increase in order. But that's not the order it takes to get life. They will use that against us, but they don't understand life and they don't understand their chemistry. We're not a bunch of ice cubes or crystals. A lot of order, but low information. So, and I'm assuming you get snow here, right? Okay, just checking that out. I've been to India. This doesn't work so well. Some places they don't get snow. But what does it take to take snowflakes and change it into a snowman? What does it take? Intelligence. Yeah, you're probably looking at these snow people and you're probably thinking it probably doesn't take a lot of intelligence, but it does take a little bit of intelligence. And this is a snow grandpa and this is a snow granddaughter. My granddaughter helped me to make these snow people. But if you add time and energy to these snow people, what's going to happen to them? They melt. Again, time and energy is no friend to evolution because things go this way. Over in South Dakota, western South Dakota, there's a little mountain range there. On top of these mountains, there's some rocks. Over millions of years of wind and water erosion changed those rocks into the president's heads, right? Only in an election year, right? I guess. But there are 2 types of heads in the picture. There's some heads here and there's some heads there. I'm going to compare these heads with those heads. These heads are made from the dust of the earth. Guess what these heads are made of? Same stuff. But these heads are far more complex. These heads can make those heads, but those heads can't make those heads. But these heads can sing and dance and write books and man into outer space, and with the help of God, they can reproduce into other little heads. But if you go to the park there and you look up there, up that heads there, and there's a stranger standing beside you, and you say, isn't it amazing what millions of years of wind and water energy can do to those rocks to produce those heads? And they will think you're what? Crazy. They'll send you off to the funny farm. But they'll look at you, and I'll believe over millions of years those rocks decayed and broke down and changed into your heads, and they'll get a PhD. Okay. These, they're spending hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of dollars to keep those heads from falling apart. Time and energy is no friend to the plot. But when I was a kid, I was taught that Freddie the Frog would get kissed by a beautiful princess. In a short time, that frog would turn to a handsome prince. I was taught that was a fairy tale. Then I went off to college, and they said the same amphibian plus God and Mother Nature, Father Time, and Mr. Random Chance over millions, maybe billions, millions of years, and that frog can turn to a handsome prince. And I was taught that was science. Do you know this is more scientific than this? You know why? At least you have some intelligence there. Now, don't go home and say the speaker said a princess can kiss a frog and turn to a handsome prince. That's not what I'm saying. But with enough intelligence, just like I talked before, with enough intelligence, can you take the dust of the earth and change it into a human being? God did it. Genesis chapter 2. How do you recognize fairy tales for children? They always start with once upon a time. How do you recognize fairy tales for adults? It is very similar. Millions and billions of years ago. This is fairy tales for adults, that's fairy tales for children, and it's the same. Push it back in the past. It's all a fairy tale. Well, evolution goes against all the laws we know of. One is the law of entropy, increasing entropy. Entropy is disorder. As time passes, entropy increases. Disorder increases. Things go from complex to order to simple to disorder. Things go this way. Bananas rot, cars rust, people die, so on. And you could put numbers to disorder. It's so much of a science, you can measure the disorder. So as we take a look at nature, nature then seems to prefer disorder and chaos. Things go this way, but evolution says it's supposed to go that way. According to science, that will not happen. Oh, ice cubes kind of order themselves, but after ice cubes melt and so on, it increases in order. Things are always going, oh, they'll bounce like this, but they're kind of going like this. So how do they get around this law of entropy? Well, it doesn't work, but this is what they would use. They will say entropy only works in a closed system. What's a closed system? You take a jar, you put something inside the jar, you put a lid on a jar, you put a dark cloth over the jar, so no outside energy can get into that jar. So all you're working with is what's ever inside that closed or isolated system. See, the earth is an open system, energy comes from the sun, shines on the earth. Well, it can put things together. Well, it doesn't work that way. We're going to take a look at a closed and isolated system. Any of you recognize that closed system? Oh, it's going to work here this morning, I guess. It's a closed system. It's a system in disorganization. The windows are closed, the shades closed, the doors closed. There's no outside energy coming into that system. I was taught, open the system. Open up the window, open up the shades, open up the door, added some electrical energy. We got raw energy coming in here. Is that raw energy or influx of energy going to organize that system? Don't you wish? It'll make my life a whole lot easier. But what does UV light do to this material? Destroys it. You know, UV light pretty much destroys everything. It really does. See, an influx of energy increases what? See, energy is no friend to the plot. It's an enemy to the plot. But there's one thing that can harness that energy, and that are plants, and they're high-tech machines that can take that energy, break down molecules, rebuild them again. How many of you are fond of eating? Yes, I'm very fond of eating. I like to eat the plants. I like to eat the animals that eat the plants. Without plants, guess what? We wouldn't have a weight problem. Everybody be dead. Okay, so what does it take to organize this system? You moms know this all too well. It takes intelligence. That's actually a couple of our adopted children. That goes back a few years. Now they got kids older than that. So it takes intelligence and power under control. Organize. Did you know that according to science, basically the universe is supposed to be a closed system? Which means if you start with hydrogen gas, that's about as disorganized as you can go. That means somebody outside of this, I don't believe in the Big Bang, by the way, but using their ideas to refute their ideas, somebody outside of this universe had to come into this universe and organize this universe. Yeah. So we're going to take a look at a space shuttle here. Everything on the space shuttle was checked and rechecked. And if they miss something, what happens? It blows up and people die. Because there's an exothermic reaction taking place right here. What's an exothermic reaction? It's a bomb. It's a controlled explosion. When you're messing around with bombs, is there any room for air? No. Well, they messed up O-rings. There was a defect there, and people died. Now, this is extremely simple. This is not very complex. We're going to get to life. Life is far more complex. Now, here we have a frog, and here we have a bug. And what do frogs like to do? Eat bugs. If they don't eat bugs, what's going to happen to them? They'll die. I like to say they'll croak. Okay, so food's right there. His tongue comes out, sticks to the bug. He brings that bug into his mouth like spaghetti. And then the next picture is the frog's going, and the bug's walking off the page. And he ran into my friend, the bomber beetle. He shoots out boiling hot liquids out of his rear section. Yes, and when this bomb goes off, basically it lights up his rear section. So how does this creature do it? Well, this is a simplified version. He's got these organs here, and they produce these chemicals. And he mixes them in this mixing chamber. He's got them all mixed up. Then he senses danger with his high-tech nervous system. Then he has to open the sphincter muscle. It's a valve. He opens up this valve, takes these chemicals, and injects them into the explosion chamber. Now, he has to remember to do one very important thing. He has to remember to close that valve. If that valve doesn't close, he's in big trouble. Yes. And then he adds a catalyst in here, causes a chemical reaction with these two chemicals here that causes this reaction. A lot of heat and pressure builds up, and boom, right out of the rear of this bug comes boiling hot liquids in the face of anything that's trying to eat it. And he's got two cannons. These two cannons can turn 360 degrees. up between his legs, over the back, side, or whatever, and he doesn't miss. Now, there's one thing interesting about this. When they were doing research on this, they discovered that explosion was so big, it should have blew the rear off of this bug. We're in a church service here, right? Does God have a good sense of humor? He does. Yeah, he does. It's his creation. So they couldn't figure out why this bug stayed intact. So they videotaped him. And then they slowed down the videotape. And as they slowed it down, they found out it was not just one explosion. It was multiple. One explosion was not big enough to blow off the rear, but multiple were enough to thwart anything that was trying to eat it. Yeah, they're studying this bug so they can build better rockets and jet aircraft engines. High tech. Now, if something would go wrong, guess what would happen to the Bombardier Beetle? He'll literally blow up. Yes. Everything has to be fully functional, everything working, otherwise it doesn't work. And then we go to a bird. This is the foot of a bird, and basically that's the foot of a woodpecker. He's got 2 claws that go forward, 2 claws that go backwards, and they clamp on the tree bark kind of like a vice grip. He's got specially stiff tail feathers here. They're kind of like wire. He pushes that tail up against the tree and it has a perfect 3-point stance. Now he's hitting his head up against a tree, and just before he hits his head up against a tree, he's got these special eyelids that he closes. Why do you think he closes those special eyelids? So the wood chips don't fall in the eye. More importantly than that, so his eyeballs don't fall out. Those special eyelids hold his eyeballs in, because he's hitting in the tree 1,000 times the force of gravity. How many of you have ever hit your head up against a tree or post? It really feels good, right? Yeah. Now, if a normal Tweety bird would beat his beak up against a tree, it would probably end like that. And he's hitting his head up against a tree 1,000 times the force of gravity. He should make mush out of his brains, but he doesn't. Because his beak is not directly connected to his skull. Between his beak and his skull, there's cartilage. This is stuff that's in your nose and ears. It's got air bubbles in it, and it forms a shock absorber. It's a better shock absorber than we got on our vehicles. And it takes out the rattle so he doesn't mess up his brain. So they're specially designed, and we take a look at it, but what are they after? Bugs. How do they get their bugs? Well, they tap, and they can hear them run around, and they tap a hole. And now bugs are not completely stupid. They know their lunch. So he's making a hole here in the front door, and they go to the back door, and then no bug. He goes to the back door and makes a hole. The bug goes to the front door. So how does he get his food? He's got a specially designed tongue. His tongue is 4.5 times longer than the length of his beak. His tongue is literally longer than his body. Now, what would you do with a tongue longer than your body? Yeah, stick it in your cheeks. Can you imagine this bird flying through the air and the tongue's hanging out and its snake's on the branch? Well, that would be bad news. Well, he's got a specially designed containment system. This tongue goes down through a hole in its beak. It doesn't go down his throat. It goes in a hole in his beak, and it comes down into his neck. Then it splits in 2 and goes around each side of the neck, and then it comes up and then is reattached into his right nostril. His tongue literally goes up his nose. How'd you like to walk around all day with your tongue up your nose? Pretty humiliating. Yeah, this is the way he's designed. So he's pecking away. The tongue's down here in this sheath. When he gets done, the tongue comes up, out, and it goes down into the hole. And at the tip of the tongue, some of these have barbs like a fish hook, or they have a sticky substance, which I call super glue. And that bug is super glued literally to his tongue. And it brings that tongue into his beak. Now, how does he swallow the bug without swallowing his tongue? He's got special enzymes in his beak that dissolves the glue. So he can swallow the bug without swallowing his tongue. Now, all this has to be all in place all at the same time, or it doesn't work. He's got industrial strength beak. He's got the shock absorber. He's got extra muscles around his neck so he doesn't break his neck. He's got these special claws. He's got special tail feathers, special tongue, sticky stuff, barbs, or it doesn't work. So when we look at these creatures, there's no way they could evolve by chance and accident. And we're going to go into mathematics now. This is going back to the 1980s. Things have gotten worse since then. Here's Wick Ramaging and Dr. Hoyle. He's an atheist. He's an agnostic. They did the mathematical probabilities of a single-cell creature like an amoeba evolving by chance and accident. According to their probabilities, this is all outdated, by the way. It's worse than this now because life is far more complex than we knew back in 1980. It's 1 chance in 10 to the 40,000th power. Is that a huge number? Yeah, huge. According to science, anything one chance in 10 to the 150 power, anything over that is impossible. It will not happen. Totally impossible. So according to chemistry, life can't evolve by chance and accident. According to math, there is no chance. When people say, oh, there's a chance that life could evolve, that's not scientific. It is zero. How big a number is that? It's like a tornado going through a junkyard and assembling a Boeing 747 all fueled up, ready to fly. That's the chance. You know where Boeing gets their planes from? Kansas, Oklahoma. Every time that tornado goes through, they just pick these planes up. Well, yeah. Okay. Now, so there must be a God. According to their research, there had to be a God. But did they run off and buy Bibles? No, they're trying to find a way around it. And Wick Ramachine here, when he started doing his research, he discovered that he was very strongly brainwashed to believe that creation could not be scientific. Is there brainwashing taking place today? Big time. Now we know more about life. According to Sky and Telescope, I think it's Sky and Telescope, it is now one chance in 10 to the 100th billionth power. I don't bet my soul on those odds. You can't lose, or you can't win, I guess. Yeah. This is chemicals taking place in your cells right now. These are chemical reactions taking place in your cells. Here's another page. These are all chemical reactions taking place in your cells right now. I'm going to take a close look right there. We're going to blow it up. You see these little green words here? These little green words, these are enzymes, these are proteins, these are help with these chemical reactions. You got hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of these proteins and enzymes in your body. Now here's another page. These are all taking place in your body. Here's another one. This is all the chemical, not all of them. We know now there's more chemical reactions. We didn't even get to the nucleus with alternate splicing and methylation. I mean, when you start looking at DNA and what it does, it's like, it is no way it could evolve by chance and accident. No way. So, according to research, we have about 30 to 60 trillion cells in an adult, roughly in there, depends on who you ask. There are 10 million chemical reactions taking place per second per cell. No wonder you're tired at the end of the day. Do the math on this one. Our DNA is a book of information, and some proteins are machines. We have ATP machines. Did you know that? They spin very rapidly. They change ADP into ATP, and ATP is little battery packs. And they spin really rapidly, and they just change that so you can have the energy. Yeah. So we take a look at God as omniscient, that's all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnipresent everywhere at once. God is very intelligent and powerful, so it's no surprise that his creation is very complex. See, according to evolution, we cannot, or actually they cannot, I used to be an evolutionist, cannot explain the extreme complexity in this universe. That's why they come up with a multiverse. I don't know if you've heard of a multiverse. This universe is so complex, so orderly, that it cannot happen by chance and accident. So they get an infinite amount of universes out there, and maybe just one of them got it right. That's us. Well, maybe some more got it. It gets just crazy. But there's no science behind that. That's just trying to get around the math and the complexity. So we know scientifically that life cannot evolve on this planet. So the new idea is called panspermia. There's direct panspermia and there's indirect panspermia. Indirect is where comets and those molecules from comets, those molecules seed the earth and then things evolve. Direct panspermia is where aliens from outer space come and bring chemicals or bring life to get life to evolve on this planet. Yeah. See, they know it can't happen on this planet. So why do you think they're sending all these probes to Mars? Trying to find water. Where there's water, there's life, right? No. Water's no friend of life. Somebody has to put the chemicals together because chemicals will not come together in water. They don't understand their chemistry. And it's worse than that, by the way. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the SETI program. They're spending millions and millions of dollars trying to find life in outer space. They're looking for non-random sequences. So they got these radio waves or these radio telescopes. They're looking for a non-random sequence where a radio wave has been ordered. They find a radio wave that has been ordered. There must be intelligence. See, I used the intelligent design concept, and they said, oh, that's not science. They used it. They said, oh, what's the science? But a radio wave, they're looking for a non-random sequence. I don't know if you remember the old radios, when you're turning from channel to channel, you get static. Well, that's a random radio sequence. But when you come to a station where there's music or someone's talking, that's a non-random sequence. Well, one year they heard beep, beep, beep. They got all excited. They heard beep, beep, beep. That's a radio wave that has been organized. Must be intelligence. They called it LGM1. What does LGM1 stand for? Little Green Men 1. And then they discovered it was a star that was rotating, a proton star that was rotating very rapidly and was giving off a regular radio sequence. They hear beep, 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 they get all excited, turn those telescopes to microscopes, and you know what your DNA is screaming? Intelligence, intelligence, someone made you, someone made you. Yes. Louis Pasteur and a number of these scientists in the past, they came up with the law of biogenesis. The law of biogenesis states that life only comes from pre-existing life. They've refuted evolution decades ago, but they still believe in this. That dead things can evolve into living things. That's why I became a creationist, because I don't have enough faith to be an evolutionist anymore. Yeah. And they have the cell theory. The cell theory is all living cells come from other living cells. And all of our cells actually come from Adam and Eve. So, Webster's Dictionary, abiogenesis. What does it mean? Bios means life, genesis means generation. Generation of living from non-living matter, which is another name for a spontaneous generation. A former theory, now what? That's all been scientifically debunked. So, we have the law of biogenesis, we have the first and second law of thermodynamics, we have the laws of math, laws of logic, laws of heredity. All these laws support creation, and every one of these laws reject evolution to be true. Every one. So, once in a while I get into a university or a college, but not very often. And I like to ask questions. I like to ask, give me some observational evidence that evolution is true. This is one that they've used. By performing this carefully controlled experiment, I will produce life without the least bit of intelligence needed. Think, you got it. So I ask questions. This apparatus, was it made by an intelligent being? And they will say, yes. Was the chemicals put in this apparatus controlled by an intelligent being? And they will say, yes. The heat or energy used in this experiment, was it controlled by an intelligent person? And they will say yes. And I will ask them, was every part of that experiment controlled by an intelligent being, or was it all left of chance and accident? Sad to say, I've lost them. They don't get it. I mean, the deer lights come on. They don't get it. Every aspect of that experiment is telling us what? Intelligent, a lot more than what we've got. But the students pick it up. The students are bright. They get it. My job is done. I just start packing up my stuff. The students take over the debate. Isn't that sad? These are people teaching kids. Pray for these people. I don't want to be in their place when they stand before the great white throne judgment and how many people they led away from Christ. There was no mercy after somebody dies. Grace and love and mercy is done. It is judgment. The just judge kicks in, and he has to judge according to the law, because he's not a capricious God. Pray for these people. They're not the enemy. They're victims to the deception. So, for they are willingly ignorant. They should know better. They got to be willingly ignorant. And it's going to get worse as we get closer to tribulation period. Now, here we have water and dust and everything. What does it take to take this and change it into the most complex things in the whole known universe? It takes a God. These are our 16 grandkids. Yeah, there's some already waiting for us in heaven. I can't wait to see them. Now, they didn't happen by chance and accident. All of them are designed, and they're all a blessing. Children are fun. Grandchildren are really fun. Yeah, what a blessing, what a blessing. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. That's the only way we can explain how everything's here. It's the only way we can explain why the universe is here. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. I didn't say that. God said that. But there's a problem. You know, the world is full of gods. I've been to India. You know, they have over 1 million gods there. That's what I've been told they have over 1 million gods. I don't know how they keep them all trapped. Well, everything's a god. You're a god, the trees are God, the rocks are God, everything's God. I was over there and they were burning incense to this tree. And I thought, well, what are they doing here? Oh, they're worshiping the spirit in the tree. They're worshiping the tree. Yeah. Does God love these people? Yeah. Does he want them to be saved? Yeah, he does. This is something I took over in India. That's the elephant god. God bless you. Well, that God can't bless you. So I have a sequel to this called Which God is the One True God? Why is our God the one true God and not theirs? That's where we go into archaeology, historical accuracy, prophecy, and science of the Bible, showing evidence that the creator of the universe is also the author of Scripture, one and the same. So we do have books over there. We have DVDs that go through some of this information. Some talk about dinosaurs and so on. We do send out a free publication. It's free. It comes out once every 2 months. You can sign your name there, and we'll send that out to you free. I also have my business card and prayer card, so you can, if you don't remember the website, you can just pick that up, and it's all on there. So, and I think we have time for some questions. Oh, we have a fossil lab there too. Melody has a fossil lab there. Highly recommend to look at that. And then we have Figi, right? Figi has a booth over there, a table over there. I got this down. Took all week. So, any questions? Got all your questions answered, huh? Well, good. If not, I'll be around if you got questions. So I'll turn over to Pastor David here. You're welcome.
All right. Well, amen. Thank you for that presentation. It was not only informative, it was enjoyable and some entertaining in there. Really appreciate that. And it is always exciting to hear what bears witness to the truth of our God, who he is and what he has done. And he is still alive and active in the world today.